Since the Fed has raised interest rates back in 2022, the housing market has never been the same. House prices shot to the roof, mortgage rates became unaffordable, and the average American was no longer able to buy the house that he wanted. Everybody was blaming the Fed. Everybody was waiting for the Fed to finally lower interest rates. Since 2022, we have made a huge progress, but mortgage rates are still at about 6.7%. Mortgage rates are about to explode. Housing is about to become even more unaffordable in the US. And this time, it is not the fault of the Federal Reserve. This time, it is Japan that is about to make housing unaffordable across America. How is it possible that another country on the other side of the world is going to make housing unaffordable in the US? That's what you will find out in this video. So if you're planning to buy a house, if you're looking at the housing market, if you're interested about what is going to happen to mortgage rates, then this is the video that you should be watching very carefully. Most people imagine that the Federal Reserve sets their interest rates. So if the Fed would increase interest rates, then mortgage rates are going to rise. And vice versa. If the Fed lowers down interest rates, then their mortgage should come down. But what if I told you that's not how the system works? If the Fed tomorrow lowers down interest rates to 0%, it is not going to bring mortgage rates down. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with the housing markets. Yes, in 2020 and 2021, the Federal Reserve subsidized the housing market that brought down mortgage rates. Subsidizing the housing market is very different from lowering down interest rates. The Federal Reserve paid for everybody that took a mortgage in 2020 and 2021. And the Fed will never do anything like that again, because that was the reason why house prices increased so much. If the Fed keeps lowering the interest rates, it is not going to impact you. If that's not the Fed, then who sets the mortgage rates? The free market sets the interest rates. There is a pool of capital in the market, and that pool of capital gets distributed. You have investors, individual investors across the US, institutional investors, or foreign investors who want to invest in the US. And you have two main markets. One is the bond market, the debt market, and the second one is the stock market where we invest in real businesses. That's why it's called an equity market. So when it comes to the bond market or the debt market, you can loan that money to different kind of entities, which is why we have auto loans, mortgages. These are loans that are given to people when they want to buy a house. You have corporate loans. Every corporation in the US wants to borrow money because they want to invest in new factories, hire new people, open a new branch. You also have credit cards. These are by far banks' favorite loans, because these loans are not backed by anything. If you take your car, yes, the price of car depreciates very quickly, but still, that loan is being backed by a real car. But when it comes to a credit card, this loan is not backed by anything. It's a short-term loan, and it's given pretty much to anybody. And that's why credit cards have a 20% interest rate, while auto loans have 6 to 10%. At the same time, you have the US government borrowing money like anyone else in the market. And here's the question. Who exactly decides what will be the interest rate on these different kind of debts? Auto loans right now have an interest rate of 7 to 10%. Interest rates on 30-year mortgages are 6.7%. While the US government debt is borrowing money right now at 4.7%. Everything comes down to risk and reward. Investors don't care to whom they're loaning that money and how they're loaning their money. The question comes down to how risky the investment is and what is the potential return I'm going to make. Loaning money to the US government is not risky because the US government is the source of the dollar. If I don't want to take any risks, I will loan that money to the US government. If you want me to loan that money in form of a mortgage, then you better offer me a higher interest rate than what the US government is paying. If you want me to loan that money for someone to buy a car, then you're supposed to offer me a higher interest rate. Why? Because a car is much worse than a house. The value of the house over time is going to appreciate, so that loan is much safer. But the price of the car depreciates over time, which is why auto loans have a much higher interest rate. So when you are in the bond market, you have to understand that when you're getting a mortgage, you are competing with the US government. And the US government can always offer a higher interest rate. Of course, the US government would want to borrow money at a lower interest rate But it comes down to how much money is there in the market. How big is the pool of capital? Japan historically has been the largest cheap source of capital for the United States. Because interest rates in Japan are extremely low, and since 1990s, interest rates in Japan has been almost at 0%, because Japan was experiencing deflation. So the Central Bank of Japan have kept interest rates at almost 0%. And if you're a financial institution in Japan, if you're a pension fund in Japan, if you're a Japanese bank and you want to make money on your investment, here's the question. Would you be investing in debt in Japan? Of course not. Why? Because you will be getting 0%. But if you take that money and invest it in the United States, in the US debt, you will be receiving 4%, 5%. Maybe even 5.5%. And that's why Japan is the largest foreign holder of the US debt. Japan holds about $1.2 trillion of the US debt. Why? Because it's in the interest of Japan. That made the US pool of capital much larger, so everybody in the US could borrow money. Whether it is you who is borrowing money to buy a house, whether it's your friend who is borrowing money to buy a car, or whether it's the US government that is borrowing money to finance that $40 trillion debt. The second way United States was borrowing money from Japan is through carry trade. Because interest rates in Japan are zero, while interest rates in the US are much higher, you could just borrow money from Japan and loan it to the US government, and you will be pocketing the difference in interest rates. And because the interest rates between these two nations have been so insanely huge, you could be making a lot of money. But here's the problem that you're facing right now. Yields in Japan are rising too fast. They haven't been this high since 1997, and investing in Japan is becoming more attractive. Look at 10-year government bonds in Japan. Interest rates, the yields over the last 12 months have doubled and increased from 1.4% to 2.7%. Look at 30-year government bonds. They've increased from 2.8% to more than 4%. So if you're a Japanese pension fund, here's the question. You could be investing in the United States and getting 4.7%, or you could be investing in Japan and you will also be getting around 4%. Where exactly will you be investing? You can make a little bit more money in the United States, but there is the risk of exchange rate. You have to take these dollars and turn them into the Japanese yen when you bring them back to Japan. So as the yields between the two nations are closing, it makes no more sense for the Japanese pension funds, for the Japanese banks to keep investing in the United States. So if Japanese banks are holding so much US treasuries, they will start selling them and bringing that money back to Japan. Not because Japan hates the United States, but rather the market forces has changed and it no longer makes sense to keep investing in the United States. Because you are fighting with the US government for the exact same pool of capital, the pool of capital is actually shrinking. Japan purchased so much US treasuries by borrowing cheaply money from Japan. But now they have to pay that money back, which means that a lot of that capital will be flying back from the United States to Japan. And that shrinks the pool of capital in the United States, which means that now there is a lot less money. Now you have people in the US competing for the same shrinking capital. You have the US government that needs to refinance $40 trillion of debt. So the US government has to borrow more money to refinance that debt to prevent itself from defaulting. On the other side, you who is trying to get a mortgage. Because this pool of capital is shrinking, the US government wants this money to be lent to the US government. So the US government is going to offer a much higher yields. But because US debt is much safer compared to the mortgage, you have to offer a much higher mortgage rate to attract this capital to be invested in the mortgage market instead of being lent back to the US government. As the yields on the US treasuries keep rising, mortgages will continue rising as well. What's the motivation for investors to loan that money to you as a mortgage when they can get a higher yield by investing it in the US treasuries and they're not taking any risks whatsoever? When you understand the dynamic of the market, you understand that mortgage rates in the foreseeable future will continue climbing and they will never actually go back, probably less than 6% in the foreseeable future. There is even a probability that mortgage rates will go back to 7%, 8%, or even 9%. And if you think that this is the entire problem, then you're making a huge mistake. Because the second part of the problem makes the entire situation much worse. The US government is consistently making the situation worse by expanding the deficit. Deficit deficit is when the government borrowing more money and spending more money than it's earning from taxes. Where do you think the government is borrowing that money? From the exact same pool of capital. Last year, the deficit was $1.8 trillion. This year, deficit will be around $2 trillion. Every single year, the deficit will continue rising. By 2030, the deficit will cross $2.5 trillion in the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, this could be like $3 trillion. Because the deficit is rising, the US government has to attract more capital. Now, the pool of capital is shrinking. How do you ensure that this money is being loaned to the US government and not being lent to people to get mortgages? You start offering a much higher yield. That money is being lent to the US government, so less capital flows to the mortgage market. And if less capital offers to the mortgage market, that means that the mortgage market has to offer a much higher yield to attract that capital. So if the yield on the US treasuries would go to 5%, then mortgages will go to 7%. And if the yields on the US treasuries will go to 6% or maybe even 7%, then you can estimate that mortgage rates can go to 9%, maybe even 10%, could be even 12%. It all depends on how high the yields on the US treasuries are going to rise. This is problematic for America because historically Americans build their wealth by buying a house. You can get your first mortgage to buy a house, and then once you're settled, once you can afford your mortgage payments, you could save for a down payment and get yourself a second house, and then you would rent that second house, and then you would get yourself a third house. On over time, that was primarily the main way how the average American has built his wealth. But now, because mortgage rates will continue rising, building wealth through real estate is becoming more difficult. That's why building wealth through the stock market is a lot easier for two reasons. First of all, you can start with as little as $1. You don't have to save for a down payment to start investing in the stock market. And secondly, if you pull out the charts and look how the stock market is doing compared to the housing market, stock prices have increased by hundreds of percentages. So if you invested the exact same money in the stock market instead of the housing market over the last 5 years, you would have made much more money. But people have a lot of questions. Which stocks exactly I should be buying? How do I know if this stock is a good investment or a bad investment? How do I know which stocks are going to rise in the foreseeable future? There are so many questions, but very few answers. And that's why you can jump on 101 call with my team, where we'll look at your exact situation, map out exactly what investing strategy fits you, and what are the best stocks you can actually buy. And the first 100 people who will use the link in the description of this video will get that strategy session completely for free. The link is in the description of this video.